What if you became an assassin for one day? We all love to embellish and exaggerate past events. Now imagine that the same story had been embellished from generation to generation for 1,000 years. What would you end up with? The result would be the story of the Assassins, a mysterious order that has spawned dozens of games and hundreds of myths. But what were the assassins of antiquity really like, and were they really that elusive? How much truth is there in the series of games, and what links the assassins with the Templars? We'll talk about all of that in the next couple minutes. Transforming into the skin of a mysterious warrior of the past for one day, meet Muhammad Salah and the fortress of Alamet, his new home. It's 1100 AD, and our Muhammad's fortress is located 100 kilometers northwest of the modern capital of Iran. It was there that the very order of assassins, which gave rise to so many legends, was based. Its origins lie in the fundamental contradictions between the followers of Islam. In brief, Sunnis recognize exclusively the Prophet Muhammad and elect their own rulers, while Shiites prefer not only Muhammad, but also his cousin Ali, and in turn, their ruler must belong to the lineage of Ali and be the heir to the legendary ancestors. This is important because the movement later split into several other parts, and their hatred for each other was often greater than their hatred for Christians. Looking ahead, we should note that the Assassins, being a branch of the Shiites, even teamed up with the Crusader peasants to fight the Sunnis together. The first myth we will encounter is that the Assassins are a sect. No, friends, better known as the Nizarites, the Assassins are an entire state that existed from 1090 to 1256. Occupying a very vast territory from Tajikistan to northern Africa, they became known as a great state. Our Muhammad Salahaddin, a subject of the ruler Hassan ibn Sabah, who will go down in history as the founder of the assassin movement, played an important role in their history. Hassan was a highly intelligent fellow who had read the teachings of the Ismailis, an offshoot of the Shiite branch of Islam. The lad became an itinerant preacher, which attracted the attention of a high Persian official, Nizam al-Mulk. Legend has it that they were friends, but that has long been disproved. For us, it is only important that Nizam ordered the arrest of Hassan, but he turned out to be cunning, escaped and, turning to the fortress of Alamet, his faith captured it without a single shot. Thus was born the state of assassins. Times were hard, for in the fortress besides our Muhammad Salahaddin lived not more than 1,000 people. It was a pittance compared to the mighty empires of the time. And that was the reason for the widespread use of assassins. Hassan's logic was simple. In those days, any war was fought like this: two Barinians would quarrel, stand on opposite hills and watch their armies slaughter each other. Hassan, sitting in the fortress of Alamet, realized that if he killed the Baron, his army would not fight. This tactic worked perfectly. The only question was where to find such elegant killers. And that's where our Muhammad Salahuddin comes in. The word assassin is often misinterpreted and was invented by the worst enemies of the assassins, the Sunnis. Many attribute the origin of the word to hashish, claiming that the ruler of Hassan smoked it and provided hashish to people. They would fall asleep and wake up in rooms filled with wine and women, more like paradise. Would-be assassins who consumed hashish experienced a semblance of paradise bliss, and after such experiences, Hassan claimed it was a demonic version of paradise. To enter the real paradise, an assassin had to follow all orders. However, one should not be inclined to envy this paradise lifestyle, as all these stories of hashish and rooms are considered fiction and propaganda by the Sunnis. Research conducted in Alamet disproves the existence of such a paradise simulation room. The word assassin was offensive to the assassins, as it came from the word hashish. A closer translation would be rude hillbilly. Our Muhammad Salah is more like a Spartan, for Hassan ibn Sabah recruited future assassins from poor families in an effort to attract those who had not yet formed a mind. Salahaddin was destined for the life of a peasant who had seen nothing but fields and kicks from the Baron. Hassan gave him an education and the promise of paradisiacal grace after death. It is easy to understand that the overwhelming majority of poor people agreed to become assassins, even though there was no hashish or demonic versions of paradise. There is a legend that candidates would come to the doors of Alamet and, despite hunger and thirst, sit there for long days, being insulted and kicked by the locals. Those who didn't break were enrolled for training, and the rest were free to leave. The legend of cruel selection has long been disproven, as poor people went to the assassins, attracted by promises of paradisiacal grace. This led to the fact that virtually without a fight, the assassins captured one fortress after another. As a result, an entire state was formed. Tales of such assassins spread far and wide, and the rulers of Alamut, including Hassan, began to call the Mountain Elder. In fact, he had the first elite secret service in history. Our Salahaddin had studied martial arts for years and was proficient with any weapon. Theater art helped him to perfectly reincarnate into any target. In addition, Muhammad, like every assassin, had his own regional specialization. Salah worked in Persia and underwent extensive training in the language, customs, and local life so that he could impersonate a local if necessary. Recall Nizam al-Mulk, who tried to arrest the Mountain Elder Hassan. He hated the teachings of the assassins and, on the contrary, was an admirer of the Sufi mystics. On October 14, 1092, after evening namaz, Nizam al-Mulk was approached by locals, including guys in Sufi costumes. One of them was Muhammad, who sent greetings in the form of daggers to the heart. This assassination was one of the symbolic moments in the history of the assassins and cemented their status as terrifying killers not to be trifled with. The vast majority of rulers adjacent to their territories even slept in armor and only let in proven subjects. Assassins also invented racketeering and took tribute from certain officials in exchange for their safety. Here, however, we encounter another myth. Assassins, though masters of stealth, could not be called masters of escape. During the reign of the Mountain Elder, about 70 people were killed on his orders, and more than 100 assassins died without escaping after completing a task. This was most likely due to the fact that after completing a mission, the assassins preferred to stay put and proclaim the will of their leader, for which they were often executed. All this made the assassins popular as elusive assassins who inspired terror even among the inhabitants of Europe. However, after the death of the ruler and closer to the decline of the state, the assassins began to work on a mercenary basis, eliminating both Christian and Islamic targets. A similarity between the assassins and the Sparta we mentioned is that the assassins adhered to the utmost asceticism. The Mountain Elder preached renunciation of worldly goods, simplicity of life and absence of temptations. These are principles that are similar to the ideals of the Spartans. However, this rejects the theory that the assassins adored hashish. In fact, Hassan executed even his own son for drinking wine. Besides, how can a mercenary remain cool-headed while under the influence of hashish? The essence was that the assassins fulfilled the faith of the Prophet, lived simply and, having completed their mission, believed that they would enter the promised paradise. Judging by the fact that they were treated with respect by major states, this scheme worked. It is important to realize that Hassan rarely killed for fun. Assassins did not touch innocents. Their goal was to prevent war against them or their supporters. Targets were chosen point by point, carefully planned and struck. There was a strict hierarchy under the running of the order, which the games conveyed clearly. Our Salah, as bureau chief for Damascus, went by the name Rafiq, which was actually a title. The mere performers of the assassins were called Fidayeen. They worked in the name of Allah and carried out the instructions that were given from those higher up in the career ladder. They also communicated to Muhammad and his team the will of the ruler. If Salah was successful, he would one day rise to the status of Daya, which is the elite of the assassins and has access to all secrets and is involved in choosing the goals and policies of the state. At this point, belief in paradise was practically on the back burner, and cold calculation came into play. After all, it was the dawn of the Crusades. Despite their simplicity and rejection of worldly goods, the assassins took their education seriously. Alamut's library was considered one of the most advanced of its kind, and the fortress's defenses were decades ahead of their time. Alamut was impregnable thanks to secret passages and well-developed defense systems. It is also worth considering that army commanders who tried to storm Alamut were suddenly killed, adding to the mystery and impregnability of this fortress. Nevertheless, the assassins were few in number and the Sunnis were pressuring them. An unexpected ally appeared on the horizon, the Crusaders. You remember al-Mu'allim from the first game, who has a real-life prototype, Rashid al-Din Sinan. The Christians actually gave the assassins the fortress of Masyaf for their services in fighting the Sunni ruler Aladdin. However, after the death of the Mountain Elder Hassan, the order lost its grip. At least 3 attempts to assassinate Saladin and end the war are documented, but all failed. Later, The Christian ruler Conrad of Manfred betrayed the assassins and plundered their lands. Of course, as a result of this, Conrad woke up with a knife in his heart. The assassin state became much more complicated after all these events, and Saladin had to fight a war on two fronts, fulfilling orders from both sides. The assassins, under Saladin's orders, assassinated European kings Raymond II and the Duke of Bavaria. In response, under pressure from the Christians, they sent 6 viziers and 3 caliphs to the foothills. It was hard to sit on 2 chairs, but the assassins managed. However, the onslaught of the Golden Horde in 1256 destroyed the assassin state. It is important to note that the assassin order is not to be ashamed of its history, as those times were characterized by brutality and the assassins were forced to act for the sake of survival. Assassins, according to UN estimates, preach the teachings of the mountain elder Hassan, and nowadays their number is about 15 million people. Plus, a descendant of the last elder of the mountain, Karim, has met with the Queen of Great Britain and Vladimir Putin. So we can say that the Order of Assassins remains alive and has not gone into oblivion. To call Muhammad Salah's life good would be foolish, for he was a murderer. Nevertheless, it is worth remembering that the assassins used point elimination tactics, thanks to which they created an unprecedented state that existed for several centuries. The phrase, "nothing is true, everything is allowed," was coined by assassin fanatic and Kurt Cobain, but the romance of assassins has been described as far back as Marco Polo, who recounted myths ranging from the Paradise Room to the suicides committed by Hassan's men to prove their commitment to their faith. The assassins are in no way related to the Templars. In reality, there was no feud between them, and the connection between the two orders was created for the plot of the game. They existed at the same time, but rarely crossed paths. It is possible that one of the Templars was killed by an assassin, but it was only a routine order. Much of the image of assassins has been artificially exaggerated and sometimes confused with other mercenaries, such as the Indian thugs and MIA stranglers. But we can talk about that in future videos. That's all for now, friends. See you all again. Thanks for watching.